Imagine you're completely blind, but your brain and visual cortex work fine. The ability to perceive and decipher images is intact, if only there was a way to capture and transmit those images directly to your brain. That's where the Orion Visual Cortical Prosthesis system comes in. It's a working artificial vision prototype being tested right now in 6 blind individuals who are helping researchers develop a new kind of machine-assisted vision.
So this is a prototype of the Orion system. Here we have the camera, the video camera that captures the scene in front of the patient. The signal goes down this cable to the video processing unit, also called the VPU, where the patient can adjust some of the parameters of what they're seeing, things like contrast, brightness, and perhaps zoom. The image gets processed here and then is sent back up the cable over to the transmitting antenna right here. So this antenna transmits the signal to the implant inside the head. Not only does it transmit data, but it also transmits power. So the implant doesn't need to have a battery. So the signal from the glasses is received by this coil here, this antenna, and then it goes to the hermetic package here. This is where the electronics are that decode that signal and then provide the stimulation pulses that go down this cable to the electrode array. The electrode array is implanted on the visual cortex right there between the 2 halves of the brain.
To learn how the Orion implant gets inside a person's head, I visited UCLA, where 4 of the 6 Orion surgeries took place.
Leading up to the surgery, I think one of the most important parts are spending time with the patient or the research subject so that they really understand what the goals of the surgery are and what the goals of the trial are, since this is a first-in-human study. This image is going to show us a few things. One is the incisions that we were doing initially. The incision's a little bit smaller now, but that's basically the type of exposure that we need. We pull the skin down in order to look at the skull, so that you can see the bone right here. We've carved out a small area of the skull here. We've opened up the dura, so this is the dura that's flapped this way. And this is actually the space going between the 2 hemispheres, or the 2 halves of the brain. And so we see the Orion implant sliding down in between the 2 halves of the brain, where the Orion goes on the visual cortices.
Once the implant is in position, it requires a thorough and complex calibration, which involves making adjustments to each electrode individually and mapping where they can be seen in the subject's field of vision. It was during this calibration that one of the 6 subjects had a serious adverse event, the only such event described in Orion's 12-month results summary, which was released back in June.
One subject had a seizure. The seizure resolved fairly quickly and did not require overnight stay or anything like that.
Seizures are one of the risks that we have always been concerned about when we were coming up with the concept and the design for this device. We know from other neurosurgical procedures that when you stimulate the surface of the brain that you're at risk for seizures.
That's kind of the main thing that we watch out for when we're kind of what we call fitting, doing a fitting and adjusting all the parameters, is make sure that we're not giving too much stimulation to cause a seizure.
After the device has been properly set up, Orion users can finally start learning how to make use of their newfound artificial vision.
When you first turn it on, it can be a little bit intimidating or overwhelming because it's a lot of flashing lights and it's not like the vision they had before.
Imagine 60 spots of light unevenly distributed across a dark field, right? And so we've got to take those spots and use those to construct a version of the image that is being captured by the video camera on their glasses.
We'll actually have someone from Scond Sight who will go out to their home and spend time with them around their house, maybe spend time with them outside or walking around the block, teaching them how to do things like they have to move their head like this because you want the camera to scan and see, you know, a wider visual field in front of you. So they'll teach them to scan, teach them how to move around their house, how to find the refrigerator door. And so we work with them over this extended period of time to basically teach them how to use their new vision.
You know, we're over a year into it for most of the people that we've implanted, and they're still learning how to use it as best as possible, but they're using it on a daily basis.
They could find the window, you can find a doorway. One gentleman even took our artificial vision trainer to a local bar and could find the cue ball and the strike balls on the pool table. And another one of the users, for the first time in 15 years, was able to walk outside of his house and walk around the block one time without anyone being with him.
As you can imagine, developing technology like this isn't easy. The implant has to be able to survive for years inside the human body.
The body is incredibly good at breaking down foreign materials. It almost surrounds your implant with cells that are trying to digest your implant and make it go away.
As one of our advisors, a surgeon, told me, it's like trying to design a TV that's about this size that you can throw in the ocean and expect it to operate for 10 years.
Scond Sight does have some experience in this area. Their last product, the Argus 2, was a retinal prosthesis. To guarantee the Argus 2 would be able to survive embedded in the human eye for years, it had to be tested for years, and some of those tests are still ongoing.
Through liquids, through heat, and through movement and any other stresses that the system could face, you're trying to mimic what it's going to face once it's implanted in the human body. So you're getting the best possible prediction of the reliability and how long it's going to last.
Orion will undergo similar tests as it navigates regulatory hurdles on its way to market. Orion still has a long way to go before it will be made widely available to the world's approximately 39 million blind people.
We're in what's called the early feasibility study. I mentioned that earlier. And that's the first study that you would do for a device like this to show mainly that it's safe. We are also, in parallel, we're negotiating with the FDA for what the next trial and what the entire path looks like to get regulatory approval. Fortunately, we were designated as a breakthrough device. We get more frequent interactions with the agency. We also get quicker responses from the agency, so it moves things along much faster.
Further down the line, this technology could prove useful for a much wider range of applications.
We're first looking at ways that we can maybe improve the quality of the vision or the usefulness of the vision. One of the first things is just looking at the actual array that lays on the surface of the brain. And that could be important because it could allow us to increase kind of the visual field. So we can, instead of seeing spots of light here, perhaps we can move some of those spots closer to the center. We're also looking at systems that would have a higher electrode count. So think of it as having, instead of 60 pixels, now we've got 150 pixels to work with. And then we're looking at other technologies that we think would complement the artificial vision experience. One of those is thermal imaging, and this would, think of it as a switch, so that one of the Orion users could flip the switch, and then the stimulation, what they see, would be based upon thermal imaging. So if I was sitting here using thermal imaging, I would see you and anyone else in the room that was generating heat. Maybe my cup of coffee back here, you could see that, or from a safety perspective, you could see an eye on the stove or the oven or things like that.
In neurosurgery, we do a lot of brain stimulation for different diseases, but the most channels that we have available right now is 16 channels. And this new device has 60 channels. So it's almost 4 times the number of areas of the brain that we could potentially stimulate. It requires some adaptation of the system, but that increase in number of channels really gives us the ability to be nimble and stimulate the brain in novel patterns that may be limiting our ability to help other diseases.
Perhaps helping people with paralysis, untreatable depression. There's all sorts of things, all sorts of ways we can modulate what's going on in the brain to help people with previously untreatable conditions.
What do you think of Scond Sight's Orion system? Let us know your thoughts, hopes, and dreams down in the comments. As always, thanks so much for watching. I'm your host, Jesse Orrell. See you next time with the fam.